Welcome to Shore Solutions, the podcast, and I'm your host, Jay Shore, CEO and founder of Shore Solutions. We are a team of national and award-winning practice management consultants with experience running a multi-million-dollar cosmetic dermatology and plastic surgery practice. We're here to share strategies and insights that will help you grow your practice efficiently and profitably. In each episode, we'll explore the steps and actionable insights to guide you through your journey to increase efficiency, boost revenue, and decrease costs. Tune in and discover how to improve your patient experience and take your aesthetic practice to the next level.
All right, welcome everyone. This is going to be a very different type of an episode for Shore Solutions, the podcast. Today, I will be hosting the episode and Jay will be our guest. So welcome once again to another episode. And today we're just going to have a conversation about numbers. What is it that matters the most to a practice manager, a practice owner, a practice administrator? Are you making money? So Jay, welcome.
Wow, isn't this a twist? Thank you. This is so strange that I am a guest on my own podcast. But
Isn't that cool, Jay?
yeah, I love it. But this is the first time in the transformation of our podcast series, as I'm going to be sharing this with my team and handing it off. That Shore Solutions, the podcast, will be hosted by myself. It'll be hosted by Christian. It's going to be hosted by Nan Maddox. It's going to be hosted by Ana Suarez. These are all our client success managers and additional partners. And rather than it just be me all the time, our team is actually going to take the lead on this, and we're going to share these moving forward. So thank you for the opportunity to be a guest.
You're welcome, Jay. But honestly, this is an exciting thing for our team. We're excited to start, helping you a little bit more and just being in this with you and just get into it and, just have nice conversations. So let's get started. One thing that I always wonder and that I think that our audience should know is, what should you look for when you're analyzing a P&L? What is it that, if I'm a practice owner, a business owner, what should I look for to make sure that I'm on the right track?
Well, let me give you the 4 keys that I do at many of my lectures. And let's talk about what medicine is first, and then I'll get into the money. Well, medicine's a science. It's a way to heal the sick and injured. It is a way to make us look young and beautiful, especially in the aesthetic cosmetic surgical industry. It is one of the most respected professions today, medicine and law. But never lose sight of the fact that medicine is a business and we have to treat it like the business that it is. So what does that really mean? Let's talk about what are our 4 priorities. Number 1, safety. Safety of our patients and safety of our staff. Number 1 priority. See, 2 into 1 priority.
Yes.
Second, we have to protect the provider's licenses. It's a must. Whether it's a physician, whether it's a physician extender, nurse practitioner, physician assistant, physician associate, esthetician, anybody that holds a license to provide and perform any procedures. Number 3, have fun. Number 4, make money.
Right, that's what we're talking about today.
Yeah, I'd say I'm trying to bring it all full circle because we have to treat it like the business that it is. So let me reach over here for a second because it isn't going to matter. My famous armamentarium of things, right?
Oh man, and for those of you who are just listening, Jay's showing all different bills of
whether they're American dollars or foreign $100 or $100 or foreign $1,000 from different countries. It's all the same, man. Make money wherever you are, but do and make money in the safest and most efficacious way. Because in our world, we don't do anything illegal, unethical, or immoral.
Or immoral, right. Absolutely.
So, let's talk about the money. All right?
Yes, it's all about the money, right?
It's all about the money. Yeah, we always say that. That's become a joke, but it's serious. Because if we don't treat it like the business it is, we'll be out of business.
Right.
What good is bringing in all this revenue if we can't make a profit, right?
Absolutely. But I do love what you were saying about, before you can make money, you got to have fun and you got to have safety in your practice and you got to protect your provider's licenses. That's your priorities. And if you don't do any of those, you're not going to make money. Or if you do make money, it's not going to be as enjoyable. You got to have fun.
So what kind of money are we looking at? Shekels, rubles, gelt, yen, euro, dollar,
Money is money is money.
pesos? Oh, money is money. Okay.
Right. Now, something that I want to mention is definitely when you're looking at, going back to the P&L, people don't know sometimes the difference between gross profit, net profit, margins. What are all these terminology? Because in the industry, and if you go to like banking industry or finances and all these different things, they always use all this terminology. But what does it come down to, Jay?
Yeah. Well, worse yet, we use acronyms.
Yeah, all these acronyms, ROI, and
Oh my goodness. And there's so many acronyms. You know, it's very interesting that you say that because Christian, you and I were on somebody else's. We were a listener. We joined a webinar last week on onboarding, and I thought this is going to be a really interesting webinar. Let's listen to it on onboarding. After the first 5 minutes, I was so lost. They're
yes,
talking these acronyms and these 3 and 4 letters that's supposed to mean something. I was so lost that after 15 minutes, I just exited out of the webinar because if I can't enjoy it and I can't learn, even if I could learn 1 or 2 different things, it was worth my time. But it was nothing that I could apply, and we laughed to each other. It's like, wow, we're looking it up, what he means on Google as we're listening to it, and we still couldn't do it. All right. So, we really want to bring you the latest and the greatest, and you're talking about all these acronyms. So let's start from the very, very beginning. And as I teach basic business financials as a faculty member at Florida Atlantic University, we talk about one of my courses and sessions that I teach is basic business financials, and it's a 3-hour lecture. But let's talk about the basics. All right. The number one top line is total revenue. All right. And then you have cost of goods sold. And here's where it gets boring with an acronym. People will refer to it as COGS. All
right,
that I remember is that COGS is something that stopped the wheels in motion because there was a cog in the wheel. But this is a
right,
different type of a cog. COGS means cost of goods sold. All right. So you have your total revenue minus your cost of goods sold, which gives you your gross profit. That doesn't mean you've made any money yet. And then below the line, look, most people, we're going to talk, on the P&L, we're going to talk about how it's produced through QuickBooks. That's the number one type of an accounting financial software. So then you have your fixed and variable expenses, which is everything outside of cost of goods that you sold. And that could be HR, your payroll, it could be your rent, it could be your maintenance, it could be your utilities, it could be your office expense and your office supplies and legal and accounting fees. And we can go on and on. Just think about all the expenses you have and you total all those expenses. So now when you add your fixed and variable expenses and you subtract that from your gross profit, that gives you your net profit.
all
And
right.
believe it or not, you can actually have a negative net profit with a positive gross profit if your expenses are too high. And what that means is you didn't make any money. And then at the end of the year, when you go to do it all, there's this 5-letter acronym. Oh boy, here we go again, called EBITDA, EBITDA, like a tomato and a tomato, which is,
Right, right.
and the EBITDA is EBITDA, and that is your earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. This is not going to be an accounting lesson. I'm just trying to explain what those letters mean, and it's also commonly known as the bottom line.
That was pretty good, Jay. I appreciate that for
I,
sure.
I learned everything from you, Christian.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I thought you were gonna say that you watched it on YouTube last
Well, that
night.
was my standard line that I give everybody. I watched a YouTube video.
But something that I was thinking when you were talking about gross profit is sometimes in different practices, I have seen this done, and I want you to give me your opinion. What is the correct way to do it? I know the answer because you have told me many times, but I want our listeners to know this. sometimes people will take those providers at a practice who are revenue generators. So you have different doctors and they see patients and they generate all this revenue and they put them above the gross profit line. So they are putting them basically as if paying those doctors their salaries is kind of like a cost of a good sold or a cost of a service sold, if you want to call it. And now, they are putting it at the top of the line and then they get the gross profit. So whatever that number was that they got on revenue, then they subtract the doctor salaries and then they get the gross profit. They might not necessarily sell skincare, but they're calling that a gross profit. Is that correct, or should we just use the COGS?
Yeah, I may not become the most popular guy amongst accountants. However, in standard accounting principles, I really want to define what gross profit is. And that is gross revenue, total revenue, minus cost of goods sold. And what is the definition of cost of goods sold? It is the cost of the goods that you are selling. You're not selling electric, you're not selling your water, you're not selling the maintenance, you're not selling payroll. They are your fixed and variable expenses below the line. So that if you are an aesthetic practice and you are selling something retail, what was the cost of that? And that's what you put under cost of goods sold. For those of you out there that are plastic surgeons, cosmetic surgeons, facial plastic surgeons, you do not put Botox, you do not put Dysport, you do not put the cost of an implant because you're not selling a breast implant. You're not selling Botox. You are providing the service. So the implant, the Botox, the Dysport, the dermal fillers all go under medical supply below the line, as a fixed or variable expense. And most of the time it's a variable expense because it will vary from time to time. But the most important part is that's the service that you're selling. You're not physically selling a bottle of Botox. And if you did, if it was legal, by the way, to just sell it on the open market, then you could put the cost of that bottle $600+. All right. And then you would sell what you would put in the top line revenue, whatever you sold it for. But that's not what we're doing. So truly the definition is everything goes below the line, either in office supply, office equipment, medical equipment. And I got so detailed that I used to bifurcate my expenses. For example, in medical supply, we had a dermatology, plastic surgery, med spa practice, and an OR. So I would put medical supply, medical, that went for my derm and recon plastics. Then I would have medical supply surgical, which was strictly used in the OR, all right, as an expense. And then all those other types of supplies, just like office equipment. I might need equipment for the surgical side, the med spa side, whatever. All right. Now, capital equipment is totally different. I don't want this to be a finance lesson, but it's always important because you want to know how are you going to properly depreciate all of this stuff if it's a capital goods.
Right. Wow, that's very interesting that you broke down all those different items to make it very, very specific. And I could totally see that being an advantage because if you wanted to know exactly where most of your expenses are going, then you will look at those breakdowns and see, what am I spending the most on?
The reason I do that, Christian, very succinctly, is that I want to know in each one of my product lines, but I combine derm and plastics into one, all right? But then I would not combine my meds box. I had medical supply medical supply cosmetic, and medical supply surgical. And this way, I would break down the revenues as well. What did I bring in on the medical side? What did I bring in on the med spa side? And what did I bring in on the OR side? I really always like to know, am I making money in my different product lines? Because if I'm not, I have to make decisions in my business.
Right. You gotta make informed decisions. That's where the informed part comes in, right? I love that. And definitely I've been applying a lot of these lessons into my personal life. I don't know if I told you that I created this spreadsheet. Once again, me and the spreadsheets, right? I love my spreadsheet in Excel. I don't have QuickBooks, so I just created a spreadsheet and I put all my different expenses that I have every day, my income, and I create a P&L for my own personal use. But I apply your principles and I broke down all the different things, and it has been life changing for me because now I can automatically know, day to day, where am I spending the most? Where do I need to cut on my expenses so that I can keep my budget? And that applies also to practices. Like if you're analyzing your P&L regularly, and honestly, you should look at it at least monthly. Honestly, I look at my finances almost every day, but as a business, you should look at them monthly, quarterly, and analyze how you're doing throughout the year. Are you meeting your goals as far as your budget? How much money do you want to spend on certain things? And then once you hit that limit, are you keeping track of that? You just have to look at the numbers.
So,
It is very, very important.
quick
Yeah.
question for you.
Yeah. Go
You
ahead.
have a positive or a negative EBITDA on
Oh,
your
gosh. Well, I'll say it's positive. It's not a 35% return just yet. And just so you know, Jay always says that for a practice to be profitable, you should be around the 35% margin in your profit. That's where profitability really kicks in. I'm not there yet, Jay, but that's my goal. But yeah, let me ask you another question here.
Well, you
So,
had more profit until you had the
I-
baby.
right, right. And now he's in school, and that's a lot of extra money now in school. And
But
yes,
however, that's an investment
it is an
to
investment,
the
right? So
future.
it's not a cost. It's not a cost. You always say a cost is something that you never get back a return on.
All right.
Although to be honest, I still don't know if it's gonna be, an actual investment until he grows up, and then I will know if it was a real investment. But yeah, let me ask you another question, Jay. Why does this matter to a doctor? Because at the end of the day, and just to kind of summarize what you said, you have your revenue, you have your cost of goods sold, all your expenses, fixed and variable, and then basically you get what you make minus what you expend, and then you get your bottom line. But why does that matter to a doctor?
All right. Well, because a doctor is a business person, businessman, businesswoman. He or she has to know some months you may have negative, other months you may have positive, and that's because you may have had a large expense that you didn't spread out over the year. You took all that expense in one specific month because I don't want to get into this much, that you put it on a cash basis if you took the whole expense versus an accrual. An example, you have a $12,000 professional liability expense. Instead of on the books taking it as $1,000 a month, you took the entire $12,000 in February. At the end of the year, the numbers will still all work out. However, I always like to split it up to show what the true profitability was in a month, because you can be put in the negative by having one huge expense in any given month. All right. But why does it matter? Because it matters how you want to continue your business or potentially change your business. If you don't know where you've been, how do you know where you're going? Right? That's an age old lie. But if you think about it, it's true. If I am continuing to make money and make profit, now I can further invest in my practice. Whether that means hiring more staff, whether that, take care of the growth, or whether that means investing in more capital equipment, more tenant and improvement build out to my facility, moving into a bigger facility. Because if I'm not making any money, then I really have to be gun shy to do this. And then further and down the road, doctors say to me all the time,
I want to get
Jay,
out.
I want to get out.
Yeah.
When should I start thinking about it? And my answer is, you just started. The moment you ask me when is the moment you should start thinking about it.
Right.
You may not effectuate your plan for 2, 3, 5 years, but have a plan. All right. Because the failure to plan is a plan to fail.
Yeah, that's another one of your lines right there.
I've got all kinds of adages. People know me, and then I regurgitate them and say, "Oh, I'm becoming like my father."
Right.
I used to hear the same old jokes and the
Oh
same old
man.
stories. But every time I think I'm like getting like my father, it makes me smile, because I love my father. He was a very smart man. All
It's
right.
funny because sometimes when I'm talking about money to my wife, she says, "Now you're sounding more like Jay." Yes, but
Well, that's because I've adopted you and your wife, so I am you.
right, right. Definitely. No, but I think that One of the things that I wanted to say now that you were talking, I just thought of this as well. When the doctor is thinking about an exit strategy, what is it that they should be focusing on? Because, of course, now you have to plan ahead. You have to start with the end in mind. What do you need to do to make sure that your numbers make sense to be sold? Because otherwise, how are you going to be selling your practice if the numbers are not right? What should those numbers look like?
Well, I'm not going to get into this much because you're stealing the episode that we're going to do next.
Okay, I'm
All
getting
right.
ahead of myself
Yeah.
on the private equity and all of
There
that.
you go.
Yes, you're right. We're doing a separate episode, and we'll have Nan joining us for that one.
But
So
let me answer that question real
sure,
quickly. Um,
give us a little, trailer on what is
the
coming.
trailer, right? If you want to end up even considering selling your business, there's going to be a potential 4 to 6 multiple of, here we go, of your EBITDA, your earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. That is very important because potential buyers, whether it's another doctor, private equity, or whatever, want to know that what they're buying is a profitable entity. So why is this all important? Because every dollar that you are able now to increase in profitability, it may be worth $4 to $6 down the road. And I say this to clients all the time. It is much better if you hire us to help you increase your EBITDA from $200,000 a year to $400,000 a year and pay us 40,000, or if that's what it took, because that extra $200,000 a couple of years from now can get you 800 to a million. All right. That's why it's important, because you need to run your business by the numbers to know, where am I wasting money? I'm not talking about doging, and this is not political. This is about, yes, I believe in some forms of doge in any business. Get rid of the waste. But I don't believe in doging humans, because we cannot provide services without humans. All right. That's the difference. We are very people focused, and we have the provider, which is the revenue side. And then we have ancillary staff, which is an expense: advertising, social media, marketing. These people don't necessarily bring in revenue, but you need it in order to
To run your
generate.
business. Yeah, yeah, that's true. Now, something else that I will say, and I know that we have been talking a lot about the P&L and the numbers and exit strategy and kind of a little bit of everything, but I just thought of something, Jay, and it's a question that you were asked yesterday. How can you increase the revenue? Because now, we have talked about expenses, how to reduce them. And if you reduce an expense, a dollar of an expense that you're reducing, that's 100% pure margin dollar, as opposed to a dollar of revenue, which you might only be getting 30, 35 cents of the dollar of actual profit, as
If you're
opposed to,
lucky.
if you're lucky, yeah, that's best case scenario. Some people might actually outperform that, and those are at the top of the line. But for most practices, that's kind of where they kind of stand: 20, 30% return. Now, tell me about revenue. What should a practice do, or what is the biggest bang for their buck when it comes to what they need to be doing to increase their revenue?
Well, I am a firm believer in not always doing what everybody else does. Because I'll give you an example. You can be the biggest and you can be the best and you have the experience and people will come to you. However, there is a med spa on every corner. Several years back, IV hydration was a brand new service. Today, everyone is doing it.
Semaglutide as well, and weight loss.
Yeah, and and there's peptides and semaglutides, and it's advertised initially coming out as lowering your hemoglobin A1C, and they found that it was an appetite suppressant, and people lost a lot of weight. I don't know what the future of weight loss is going to be. When I first started in this, it was, diet and exercise, and then it was HCG, whether it was oral or sublingual or injectable, and it was phentermine. And each one has its drawbacks, by the way. And if you starve people and put them on X amount of calories in any particular day, you're going to lose weight just by the nature of starvation. I have transformed my diet tremendously My wife took away all the Oreos and she took away all the Milanos and she got rid of the hot dogs and she got rid of the processed cold cuts, all right, that I used to love to eat. And now cut out the sodas and now I'm drinking the water and vitamin water. And, anyone that knows me knows that I'm a Propel junkie.
Yeah,
All
always
right.
drinking Propel.
All right. And it's because very big golfer.
Oh,
So
okay.
I always like to be
It
hydrated.
propels you to success, right?
Yeah, good funny joke. Da-da, da-da. So let's get back to the revenue portion. What would I do? I would bring on services that I haven't done before, that are big in the marketplace, that everyone has done, that the buzz is already out there. If I already have a patient base, dermal fillers, neurotoxins, they've been out there for a while. CO2, men's and female sexual health. There's all kinds of wonderful services out there. Hair removal, has been out there forever. Start small with minimal investments, and then they've got all this capital equipment. You can capital equipment your life to death. All right. Because remember, be careful of people coming in with spreadsheets telling you how much money you can make by doing X amount of procedures. The problem is you have to have the patient base that need those procedures before you buy the equipment. It's not like the movie Field of Dreams, build it and they shall come. I always like to know, take a poll of your patients before you buy the equipment because some of these modalities are really old. All right. I'll give you the example, and I'm not going to pick on any one in particular. I'm going to pick on a lot. All right. Years ago, Thermage was one of the things, for radio frequency. And then came all the cryolipolysis, and, with many. And it was the big thing. And then came version 1 and version 2. And then there was CO2 assisted RF. All right. And there's so many different things and modalities out there. Sometimes I believe in buying a multimodality machine that can do telangiectasias, hemangiomas. It can do vascular and pigmented lesions. It can do, onychomycosis for a nail fungus. It can do hair removal. There's a very big benefit to multi-platform. You only have like one investment, be able to do all of these services. But let me tell you the downside. You can't book all these patients concurrently because the
Right.
machine can only be in use if you have a multi-platform machine at one time.
Right. Yeah.
Secondly, if it breaks down, you're out of business for 4 different modalities. All
Yes.
right.
That's
I,
yeah.
I've been there, done that. So pick
Good.
and choose and refuse which things that you think can make you money. Do not go out and spend a lot of money in the very beginning when you cannot afford to do so.
Correct. No, I love that. That's great advice. And if I would add anything to that, I would just say start from where you are, and I think that the biggest bang for your buck to increase your revenue is making sure that your people are trained, your phone staff people, and all your staff really on how to convert the patient, how to provide a really good patient experience, and being able to sell to the patient and upsell. And if they know how to do that, right there and then you're going to increase your revenue because a lot of practices don't even realize how much revenue they're losing by their people not being properly trained to convert those calls into consults.
That's a very good point.
Mhm.
So, how do you do that?
Well, you start training your people. You gotta start having them, listening to their calls, being able to get feedback to them, and allowing them to listen to themselves, seeing what they sound like, seeing what they need to improve on, and
So
setting goals.
let me play devil's advocate.
All right, go ahead.
Christian, I'm a doctor and I'm in clinic all day and I'm in the OR all day and then I'm doing post ops and then I'm doing consults. I don't have time to listen to calls.
Well, you can outsource it, Jay. You can have a team that can do it for you. And whether that's even your practice administrator, if that's someone who has experience on sales and how to talk to the patients, then they can do the training, they can listen to the calls, and they can provide that feedback and coaching.
So what kind
If
of phone system do I need?
it should be able to record calls. I mean, there is so many out there. I'm not gonna tell you what to get, but whatever you get, just make sure it can record calls and it has good metrics and analytics. That's like the main two things I would say. Everything else, it's good. All these other like gadgets and all these other features, that's great. But the main things I want to be able to have is being able to listen to my people's calls so that I can provide coaching and advice on how to improve, and then being able to track the metrics and see where the patients are coming from. Because if you don't know where they're coming from, you don't know where to invest your money, going back to the money, right? To be able to maximize that revenue. Because if you find that a lot of people are coming from, I don't know, maybe referrals, then you can start saying, okay, maybe I'll start a little referral program. But be careful because there is a lot of laws against, compensating.
Like or in kind for the referral of services. You cannot refer or compensate people in like and or in kind for the referral of a patient.
Correct. But there is ways that you can maybe not compensate the person, but you can provide some kind of special for the person who is being referred as opposed to the person who is referring the patient, right? There is all these ways to generate revenue, right? And all this goes back to strategy and being able to know, first of all, do you have the right team? Second of all, what is your equipment? What you were saying, right? Of course, there is pros and cons with having the multiple modalities and all of that. But
Yeah.
that's a different episode of itself as well.
But
But what?
Christian, how
Yeah,
do I know all the calls that are coming in? How do I know how many came in? How do I know what the status is? Them? How do I know what procedures they called? How do I know what was quoted? I mean, how do I know all this information? I'm a doctor. I'm in the OR all day.
I'll give you another acronym, Jay. CRM.
Okay,
So it's
okay.
a customer relationship management. And there is so many different softwares out there that will do this for you and that will help you keep track of those leads and for your people to be able to actually follow up. And you have a very good lecture about the art of the follow up. And that's a big part of that. You got to be able to track all these different things you mentioned. And that's a customer relationship management tool. People sometimes do it on a spreadsheet, and we actually provide spreadsheets to our clients who are not ready to make an investment in a CRM from the get go. But at the end of the day, you gotta get yourself a nice CRM that will help you convert more leads into patients.
Where do I get these CRMs?
Well, you just call the companies out there, schedule a demo and see which one you like the most. There is so many options out there that you can pick from.
How do I know which one is the right one?
Well, going back
I'm a
to
doctor. I'm too busy. I'm in the OR all
okay,
day.
okay, yeah, you just hire us, Jay. Hire us. We'll do it for you. We'll find out which
All
one is
right.
the best for
So I
you.
want to make a disclaimer to the listeners. I want to make a disclaimer to the listeners.
He's not a doctor,
I'm not a doctor. All
right?
right. I was saying that to be difficult with Christian, but my disclaimer is I'm not a physician. Go on, Christian.
Yes. I guess the answer, Jay, is just hire us or hire somebody to do it for you and to help you figure it out. Or if you have staff members like your practice administrator, practice manager, they can look into different options, book some demos, and see what makes the most sense for your practice. At the end of the day, every practice is different. And depending on your size, how many people do you have as patient base and how many people you're attracting every month, maybe you need a more robust type of a CRM. And a good one for that would be, for example, Salesforce is a big CRM. And there is other CRMs out there that are for the growing practice, the small practice, for a med spa as opposed to a plastic surgery practice. So depending on who you are and where you're at in your journey, then you can hire what makes sense. But also keep in mind growth. Don't get a CRM that maybe works for you right now, but in the future, as you're growing really fast, maybe it will not be good enough. So you got to also think ahead and see what's going to be the best.
So, in closing, I heard that you have this employee staff training called this conversion cascade. All right, because the phone rings. Yeah, I heard that you listen to them. Yeah, I heard that there's a CRM. I heard about that. But what is this conversion cascade to help my staff educate themselves on training and being able to sell?
Right. It's a tool that we have created and that will allow people to train their staff and they can watch all these videos. You are actually the host of that one, Jay. You're the one who teaches during those 6 hours, and it's very educational. They will get to learn a lot about patient experience, about the conversion wheel, and all it is really a funnel, right? So you have the beginning of the funnel, which is your marketing, which is how do you attract your patients, then how do you convert those leads, potential patients, into actual patients by scheduling a consult, and then what do you do at the consult to make sure that they convert and have the actual treatment or procedure and become a patient. And then how do you keep them coming back for more? How do you keep them referring you to their friends and family members and all the people that they know? And then how do you repeat all of that wheel over again once they send you their referrals? So it's a whole process, and it goes into all these different steps and what you should be doing as far as phrasing. It has different tools, so it's a really great tool.
How do
But
I
going
get it?
Well, you can go to our website, Jay, to shoresolutions.com, and you'll be able to, there's a section right there, sales training, and you'll be able to sign up for the course. And if you're actually a podcast listener, you can actually use the code podcast and get a 20% discount for this one. And you can do the course, and that will help you generate more revenue. And then, of course, if you want to analyze P&Ls, if you actually want to get into the numbers, we also have a package where we can do a one-off, just meet with you, look at your P&Ls, give you some good advice on how to improve it and make more money, reduce expenses, and become more profitable.
All
So
right.
that's
So
pretty much it.
enough of the sales. All
Yeah,
right.
that's enough.
I had to
I
get
mean, I didn't mean it to be a sales pitch, but that's kind of the direction it went.
well, but you have to learn how to sell in order to be able to bring in the money. And that's just as important. If you don't know how to sell, you're going to be spending and investing a lot of time and money in your marketing, but your team won't learn and know how to convert. And
Right.
that's important.
And you know what about that, Jay? Do your patients know all the services that you provide? Because what we just did, we gave you a couple of our services, but do your patients know all of your services out there? Because sometimes they don't.
Now, I'm going to give you a quick story. In my former clinic, we were dermatology, med spa, plastic surgery, and surgery center. And I used to have dermatology patients coming in asking if we knew of a good plastic surgeon. We had plastic surgery clients coming in for consults and asked, do you know a great dermatologist? And I realized right then and there that I made the biggest mistake. All my marketing was not as effective. I assumed everybody knew what we did. So I went out and I bought, now everybody has it, but back then, at the turn of the century, what I did is we bought a widescreen TV, put it in the reception area, and I didn't take any of the freebie CDs that vendors gave us. We created our own so that it was more family, and we ended up putting it so that people would know what we did. And it wasn't just procedures. And if it was, we hired a new person, we did a little bit of spread on video of the new person. If somebody got promoted, if it was somebody's work anniversary, people love knowing the family type of an atmosphere. All right. So, it's all about bringing in more business and marketing, and it's awareness. You can't ask people to buy what they don't know what they're buying. When anytime I want to search for anything to buy, I go right to Amazon.
There you
If
go.
Amazon doesn't have it, I'm not buying it because they have everything. So should your practice. Should have everything that you can provide, and don't let the patient or prospective patient peruse your website and browse your website and know more than your team. Your team should know your website upside down, inside out, front and
Mhm.
back.
Right.
That's
And
it.
all of these things make you money.
That's
So
all,
there it
folks.
is. That's all, folks. Thank you, Jay, for being a guest in our podcast, Share Solutions, the podcast today. And, we look forward to another episode where maybe another team member will be hosting. Thank you to everyone who is listening, and we hope you have a great rest of your week. Good luck and God bless.
Don't go anywhere just yet. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe so you never miss the latest insights. New episodes are released every 2 weeks. For more valuable information and resources to elevate your practice, sign up for our e-newsletter. You'll get the latest industry updates, expert tips, and exclusive strategies straight to your inbox. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media at Shore Solutions. If you're ready to take your practice to the next level, schedule a free consult with our team today. Thank you for joining us on Shore Solutions, the podcast.